In the wake of the UAW's historic contracts they won last year with the Detroit Three, Sean Fain and the UAW really set their sights on organizing the non-union plants of America. There are a lot of them, a lot of transplants, overseas companies, but also the new startups. First stop, Chattanooga. You were just down there last week or this recently. What did you see? What was it like?
Well, it was really interesting. It was about a little over a week before they're scheduled to vote there. And what caught my attention is as you're driving into the Chattanooga plant, it's massive, massive site, right? The main road leading into the main entrance is called Volkswagen Drive. And there were dozens and dozens of anti-union yard signs stuck along the side of the road there and in the roundabouts and everything of that nature. Really interesting messages. My favorite was "Don't Detroit my Chattanooga." There were some tying the UAW to Joe Biden. There were signs that just said, "Can I just work in peace? The UAW can't take a hint." So very strong anti-union presence, not a single pro-union sign. And I found that interesting. It's actually on purpose. This is sort of part of the UAW's revamped strategy. The workers told me, we're not going to waste our time and our money putting up signs, taking out billboards, radio ads. That's all for the public. What we want to do is really convince the workers, really get the voters, the 50 plus one that we need in order to win this election. So they've spent all their time and energy within those plant gates, handing out flyers, talking with workers on breaks, really trying to have one-on-one conversations.
So that's a change because they found that what they were doing before wasn't working. Were there other things that were flawed in the UAW's past strategy?
Oh, that's a loaded question. There's definitely a lot of things. If you think about organizing itself, one anecdote I thought was kind of interesting. A worker I spoke with told me back in 2019, the last vote that they lost by a pretty slim margin, they did house calls. It's sort of a common organizing strategy. You go knock on people's doors.
Yeah.
Outside of the workplace environment, maybe they'll invite you in. You have a little more time to talk to them. But apparently in 2019, those VW workers absolutely hated the idea of door knocking and somebody talking to them at their home. So this time around, they're not doing that. It's a pitfall they said they've avoided because of that past experience. Now, the UAW itself was also criticized for not only in Volkswagen's case, but in the case of other organizing drives, having too much of a top-down approach where leadership from Detroit would come down and tell them what to do, how to run their campaigns. This time, it's different. They say it's worker-led, and from what I saw in Chattanooga and what I've heard from other workers at Mercedes and Hyundai plants, they actually mean it. They're getting out of the way, letting the workers decide what strategies are best, and letting them sort of handle things.
Well, they are supposed to be union locals.
And another interesting fact is that in Chattanooga, there is a UAW Local 42. It was established in 2014 in another failed attempt at VW, and it sort of exists as this kind of zombie organization, right? Because a worker can't join it today because they're not unionized. They wouldn't be able to pay dues to the UAW, but it's still there. There's like a skeleton crew in place. So they have some infrastructure because of these past few failed attempts. They have that experience, they have those lessons learned, and they're hoping that's going to lead them to victory this time, especially since they were only a few dozen votes short the time before.
So if they win this time, what's next? Where's Sean Fain likely to go next? You mentioned Mercedes.
Yeah, Mercedes plant in Alabama outside Tuscaloosa, they are next with a vote. We expect that probably by early May, so within the next month or so or a few weeks here. But in terms of what's next, it's not even necessarily a vote. It's the second that they win, if they do, they're going to start to push for a contract because that's a very important next step of this process. You don't just need to win, you need to win and get a contract. In the past, that's proven elusive at other companies that have unionized. The organizations they work for try to play games and delay things. So Sean Fain really wants to, day one, start focusing on that first contract.
And you got to speak with Sean Fain. He's pretty confident, isn't he?
Very confident. He not only expects to win at Volkswagen, but Mercedes and Hyundai and Nissan and all across the country. Tesla, Rivian, you can go on down the list. And there's a few good reasons for his optimism. I don't think it's entirely unfounded here. You have that revamped organizing strategy that I just talked about. You have better conditions that the UAW is operating in. In the past, during the Great Recession, they were slashing their pay, they were giving up benefits in order to keep the Detroit Three alive. And if you're a worker in the South and you're seeing, wait a minute, I'm going to join this union that's going to negotiate lower pay and worse benefits, why would I do that? It's a bad sales pitch. That's what one expert told me. Also, you had that corruption scandal. That was a big deal in late last decade, beginning part of this decade even. And the UAW's past that now. They have new democratically elected leaders. The environment, the climate for the union's better. And also, I think the third thing we can point to is the fact that the union has a better understanding of the opposition's playbook. And in the case of VW, at least, management, which at times has been hostile and helped contribute to defeats, has promised to remain neutral. And that's another thing I did see when I was down there. VW is really keeping that commitment of neutrality this time around, more so than they did in 2019.
I think a lot of times companies say they're going to be neutral, but then they're pretty active trying to spread the counter argument, at least, if not anti-union, at least what might not be a benefit to you.
And that's exactly what happened in 2019. On the surface, they said, yeah, we support whatever our workers decide. But then they hosted Republican Governor Bill Lee to speak to workers. They had a lot of captive audience meetings, morning meetings with management and supervisors speaking to the workers, telling them things like, hey, if you unionize, we wouldn't have this direct line of conversation to you. You'd have to go through an intermediary. Maybe Volkswagen wouldn't want to invest as much here anymore if they're unionized and their labor costs go up. Hint, hint, vote no, in as many words, right? This time, they're not doing that. VW told me they're not inviting the governor inside the plant. They're not hosting any town halls for workers, pro or anti. And they're really, in fact, I took a tour of the plant and there were messages on monitors leading into the main way that workers go into the plant that encouraged them to vote and reminded them, even if you've signed a union support card, an authorization card, that doesn't count as a yes vote. You still need to vote yes. Or if you didn't, you still need to make your voice heard if you want and vote no. So those reminders, I thought, were a pretty good indication that, the company at least is trying to present all the options.
Voting is Wednesday through Friday.
Correct.
Will we get results Friday night, Saturday?
We would expect probably Friday night.
Yeah. Michael Martinez, thank you so much for joining me. And of course, we'll keep track of the results when they break on autonews.com.
Thanks, Jamie.